There's a place in the U.S. we need to talk about.
Hennepin County.
Hennepin County.
What are they doing differently?
It's called Hennepin County, and they're ending homelessness.
Where are we?
We're in North Minneapolis in my little studio apartment. This is where I live. This is where I would have been put out of. I would have had nowhere else to go if ARS wouldn't have stepped in. I come home from work, there's an eviction notice on the door, and there's also a paper from the state of Minnesota saying I need to go to court. I didn't know what to do, so I called ARS. They told me they're gonna handle it. They handled the sheriff department, they handled the landlord, and they got me the place back. They got me the place back.
For a lot of people like Jerel, that is their first exposure to the court process. So my job as an attorney is to bridge that gap between this very scary process and the possibility of losing your home. And we were able to negotiate a settlement that worked for both parties.
If they wouldn't have stepped in, I would definitely be homeless. I would be out on the street with everything you see in here. You know, probably a little less, probably a lot less, you know, everything that fit in that little suitcase.
And this is a perfect example of one critical strategy in Hennepin's system developed to end homelessness. Last year, we learned how Finland is doing it, but many believe their success can't be replicated in the States. Hennepin is working hard to prove that theory wrong.
Having a home now has changed my life completely.
Now we have a place right here that's directly into the community where the people are. We're knocking down the barriers to get them into housing, you know?
We have to listen as deeply as possible to those who are experiencing our decisions and those who are implementing our decisions.
Our goal is to disrupt pathways to homelessness.
A community in the United States of America that is reducing homelessness.
In 2021, 1,384 people exited homelessness to permanent housing. In 2023, we saw 2,171 people exit homelessness to permanent housing. So a 57% increase, the rate at which people who were literally living in shelters or on the streets were moving into their own apartments, into their own homes.
We can solve homelessness in our own country.
It's how to get my mind right and get off that stuff, man.
Amidst a growing crisis where bipartisan efforts have made it illegal to sleep outside, Hennepin has set an immensely more humane standard for how even densely populated urban areas in the U.S. can solve this crisis.
Having four walls around you and having a spot to go, that does make you want to get sober. It pushes you to better your life.
It's a lot better than what it was packing people in a space like sardines.
But when you actually have your own place and you don't feel that hopelessness anymore, I don't really feel the need at all to actually use.
We are in this together with you. We will walk alongside with you.
And I feel like content now and happy. I'm happy, so I don't want to ruin that.
They're using shockingly simple, county-wide solutions. And once you understand what this looks like and how it happened in Hennepin, you can understand how it will work where you live too.
I'm going home, y'all. When I first started at the county, it was 2015. We didn't have really any of the infrastructure or systems work that we have right now. And we didn't have any diversion. So people, when they called, it was like, what shelter do you need to go to? Rather than, what is your situation? How can we help you? What do you need? And so by putting that diversion program at the very, very front of our system, we were able to add a whole other layer of services and support that also benefited our shelter system because we had less people flowing into shelter, which allowed us to make our capacity work better for people and just avoid that trauma of entering shelter.
We know that people who are in a traumatic situation will call every phone number they can think of to get the help they need. One of the most critical things about preventing homelessness is allowing people to access rent assistance readily and easily. One of our primary tenets in housing stability homeless prevention is to ensure that there's one place for people to call.
They call that inbox. It's fielded every day by me and other navigators. We help them sign up for those programs to help them get that rental assistance so we can prevent a possible eviction.
The centralized system that allows us to administer rental assistance, each one of those funding sources represents a very rigid set of eligibility criteria and other sort of conditions in which someone might or may not be eligible. By braiding these sources together, we can actually focus on the residents' needs versus the funding source's constraints to put together a package of assistance that works for them. Our goal is to disrupt pathways to homelessness, intervene at critical points of risk, and ensure that folks have access to short, medium, and long-term resources to sustain their housing.
I like that disrupt disrupt the path to homelessness.
We've also focused on ensuring that every low-income household in Hennepin County has access to legal representation. Any household going through the eviction process. That's through a partnership with our adult representation services.
Because once a person is homeless, I mean, the ability for that person to obtain further housing after that is greatly diminished. You would have an eviction action on your record potentially, and that is going to cause difficulty in finding additional housing because future landlords are going to look up that eviction and more than likely not rent to that person. Once you are facing a cycle of homelessness, I mean, it's devastating to have to be out on the streets.
When we were talking to one of the lawyers of the Adult Representation Services, he told us the story about Brian. When we walked in, Brian was wearing a mask, and he said, "I'm wearing it because I had most of my jaw removed." Brian has cancer and other health issues, and if it wasn't for eviction prevention programs, he would be outside homeless.
I've had to have constant surgery and in the hospital 6 months or more. Had no opportunity to work. I was gonna have an issue with rent. Your heart drops because I've been homeless before. I've lived on the street. I've been there before. I've done what you've had to do to survive in the street, and it's horrendous. Who do you go for these things when you're in this crisis? I felt like my back was against the wall, and very grateful that they helped me pay 2 months of rent, which was good enough for me to keep working my job, not worry about, I gotta pay thousands of dollars that I don't have already. If I didn't get that information, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be outside. If you look around, this isn't the Four Seasons Hotel, but it's also not the Four Seasons outside. To have a safe spot and a safe place, you don't even understand how good that is.
Being able to remain in his home took one additional thing off of his plate. Not having to face homelessness was a tremendous help in his battle with cancer and really just gave him a new lease on life, that he didn't have to worry about facing a horrible disease and also having to face being out on the street. I'm not aware of any other program in the United States that provides these services on a countywide or a government level. I mean, a lot of folks are in places that they are struggling to afford. I mean, one car repair, one electric bill away are a lot of tenants from not being able to pay their rent every month.
The critical sort of point of impact is reaching households at the right moment before an eviction proceeding results in a loss of housing.
Sit down here. There was a death in my family, so I was away from home and work for a couple months, taking care of my family, doing what I had to do. All extra money was just going to my grandma's bills, food on the table. I just fell behind on my bills at the end of the day.
It was incredible hearing these success stories, but we wondered, how can the county justify the cost? Isn't this process expensive?
Diversion is cost effective. We can divert someone often in just one phone call. 80% of the people we divert never return. And so that's a phone call at staff time and maybe a small amount of financial assistance, which then saves money for our system and for taxpayers.
So Hennepin County has been working with Community Solutions for some time now. In the last year, they have invested in our community in several different ways. So they have created gains in staff time, staff capacity, as well as supported us with a $400,000 flexible fund pool that we're able to use to break down housing barriers for people experiencing homelessness. So that can be paying for rental applications, deposits, move-in costs, as well as paying for back rent to move people into housing quickly, efficiently, and reduce the strain on the system.
We actually invested as a county almost 40% of the pandemic recovery funds we received into homelessness and housing. And those were discretionary funds that could have gone to any county functions. But this is where we felt we could have the most beneficial impact for our community, both immediately and long term. A lot of that went into capital development to provide deeply, deeply affordable housing options for people. And we were investing operational funding. We've seen how those investments have really accelerated the rate at which people move into housing in our community. We took something of a leap of faith in those investments, knowing that we could do a lot of good while the funding was there, And we would need to use that time also to build the case for ongoing funding. We would need to show the efficiency, the effectiveness, the equity of investing in this way and how it benefits the community as a whole.
We operate in this world of resource scarcity, and when we have people on the street who are experiencing an immediate crisis, who are at tremendous risk, and they're in front of you, we have to devote a big chunk of our resources to solve that housing crisis. But we've learned over time that this is a long-term issue if we don't get more upstream. And I think that's really where the focus on prevention has emerged.
If we go back to 2016, people queuing up outside the shelters each night, every night on a first-come, first-served basis at the major shelters. Each day there was this uncertainty for a lot of folks as to where they would be able to stay. And then go now to one of those shelters, the building has transformed, the staffing levels are higher, there are fewer people staying there, but those that are staying there get a much better quality of service.
I've been walking around downtown for a couple of days. My work isn't scientific, but I often walk the same areas with a couple years gap. I'm not seeing the homelessness that you see in other urban areas.
Every single funding cycle, every single budget presentation, every time we add staff or expand partners, we have to listen as deeply as possible to those who are experiencing our decisions and those who are implementing our decisions. And that really is at the center of the ways in which Hennepin's broader housing and shelter policies have strengthened and evolved over a couple decades.
We started the Lived Experience Advisory Group. We also have them involved in our hiring process at Hennepin County. They're involved in the final interviews. We also now at Hennepin, because of this, have folks with lived experience working at Hennepin County.
When we are at the table rather than on the menu, we change the dynamic of every single thing that's going on because we offer a different type of vocabulary, a different type of seeing and experiencing.
How did this happen that you guys are empowered to make decisions? Because everybody else, they get a lived experience committee, they meet once a month, and nothing changes.
So I interview people that are going to be hired in housing stability. And at least I feel like the people that I work with here understand the value of what we do. You only have that perspective if you've lived that experience.
Pretty much everything I do really comes from what I hear from people with lived experience. So if I hear that, something's going wrong in shelter, or they're not getting connected to a housing case manager, or they, aren't feeling supported, then I always follow back up with those programs that we fund to make sure it can get righted, or at least we're on the path of making those improvements.
They developed a shelter bill of rights in 2019 with 10 items that they wanted to see change in the shelters. And we've worked on all of these items with them, we've built them into contracts, but when we asked them, of these 10, which is the biggest priority for you, it was case management to help us get out of shelter and into permanent housing. So that's where we as a county have really doubled down, both with funding for our non-profit partners to add that capacity, but also building out our own teams to go into shelters, to go into encampments and other unsheltered settings and work towards housing with people. That really didn't exist before the pandemic. We looked at one of our shelter programs. They had a 1:80 case management ratio. Now 75% are open 24/7, so people can stay during the day, can work with case managers.
So that's family shelters, youth shelters, single shelters. We have daytime and overnight drop-in centers.
So people can enter shelter kind of one of two ways. They can either, enter themselves by calling the Hennepin Shelter Hotline, which is that diversion program, and getting connected to the Adult Shelter Connect, who will make a bed reservation. Or they can be connected through working with a street outreach team who will help kind of get them into a shelter. You can be housed either directly from the streets or you could be housed directly from shelter. We are heading to our largest shelter. They serve about 230 people in this space. Before COVID, I think there was about 400 or 500 people in that shelter at one time. So we've made quite a few investments just based on people with lived experiences feedback that we need more humane living spaces.
This renovated shelter can accommodate 239 people per night. They have a safe bay overnight area for about 60 people in bunk bed dorm style rooms, and they also have rooms where people can stay for extended periods with just a few roommates. The shelter provides laundry, hygiene products, meals, and everyone has access to a caseworker.
The space behind you is one of the common spaces. This is a smaller room, lockers, and everybody has their own little outlets. This is a bigger room.
It's a lot better than what it was packing people in a space like sardines.
Shelters are great at getting people off the streets so that they do not die outside, and shelters play a valuable role in a community-wide system if they're housing focused. People cannot remain on these cots and get better.
When it comes to surviving out on the street, wondering where you're gonna get your next meal, where you're gonna sleep, where you're gonna bathe and all that, and being out on the street, yeah, it was a struggle. It was hard. Just being here was a life-changing experience because I met the right person and she ended up getting me into the apartment that I am in now. And I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I'm doing much better.
Often, homeless services expects homeless people to travel to wherever their office is. The Hennepin County outreach team sets up a tent right at a homeless encampment.
Our team comes out to encampments several times a week. We meet with residents here to work on housing. We do assessments, we do connections to other resources, assistance with obtaining their food benefits or their cash benefits. We're kind of the gateway to getting some services.
We have a working relationship with our clients on the streets. You can get a person into housing, but what type of support do we have to keep them? That's the critical piece.
Well, I hear retention is a big part of what the county is doing.
Is you gonna go over there?
I got my appointment tomorrow.
Homeless to Housing team, which is now over 58 people. They have housed 917 people since November of 2021. And we are rocking at a 94% retention rate. It's not just about finding the housing. It's about helping people transition into housing, having it become their home, feel like they have ownership of it, that they feel comfortable and proud of it. And that's how we create sustainability, not just giving people the keys and being like, next. So it's helping people to get there. It is complicated. You need to get an ID, you need to call people, you need a phone, you need to show up to appointments. So having workers join with them, be able to be in encampments, get them signed up for benefits in real time. Say, I will be here 30 minutes early because I know you like to sleep in, so I'll knock on your tent and then we'll go to your housing appointment. We are in this together with you. We will walk alongside with you. It's a lot of navigation, but it works and they deserve it. And I believe that's how we end encampment.
But Hennepin County doesn't stop at encampment outreach. They also embed social workers in additional locations where they're most needed.
I don't know where you guys hang out. Have you ever seen Streets to Housing, any of the other outreach teams up there? Don, I'm gonna update your coordinated entry. You already have a couple entries. So most of the outreach that we do is I'll do coordinated entry assessments, which are the housing assessments, and then I also will check on the status because many of the people that are sleeping on the train, they've already done a coordinated entry, but they don't have a phone or email, so it's good to look them up to see if they have a housing referral. 5 years ago, it was like 7 or 8 people on a team, and now it's 5 times that. Hi. Hello, I'm Sarah. How are you? Is Pam helping you out? Good.
And then I'll be at the Franklin Library tomorrow between 12:30 and 3:30.
Okay. All right.
Let's sit down and do a housing assessment.
I will be there.
Awesome. Can't
Nice
wait
to meet
see
you, Kat.
So I'll go into my office and then I'll print it off because it does have like a lot of like the details in there. So this is the social work office at the library. So I'm on the homeless access team with the county, and then I'm here full time, basically provide like first come, first serve, drop-in services. Library staff can only do so much, and they have different training. And so having a social worker here means that then I can have access to this county-wide system to be able to connect them maybe to their case manager that library staff wouldn't have access to, or more of like a mental health substance use lens to figure out, okay, like this is a mental health situation that's going on, let's get you connected to the crisis residence, or let's get you screened or detox.
Opioid addiction it's a tough one to get off of. I started using opiates. I was around 12, 13, I'm 33 now, so I've been around opiates probably my whole life. My mother, she was a opiate addict. She used heroin all through the 90s. I mean, I remember being in diapers and seeing her knotted out on a toilet and Like, it was just a normal thing for me to be around people that were slumped out. I've been to probably like 3 or 4 treatment centers in my life. Like, if they take you from tents and put you in a treatment, and you do a 28-day program or a 90-day program, you get out, I mean, you're still right back out on the streets. You have nowhere to go. And you see all the old people and you start using again, and that's a trigger for anybody. I recently got clean off fentanyl. Having a place to go, and I'm comfortable with closing my eyes and going to sleep and sleeping for hours and not worrying about my stuff getting taken or having 4 walls around you and having a spot to go. That does make you want to get sober. It pushes you to better your life.
Now we have a place right here that's directly into the community where the people are. When they're ready, they just walk in. All the barriers, that's what we're doing. We're knocking down the barriers to get them into housing,
You can't have a conversation about homelessness in Minnesota without highlighting the Indigenous homelessness crisis.
Indigenous people are always affected the most by whether it's drug addiction, whether it's homelessness, whether it's gang violence, shootings. We're 1.4% of the state, but we're always like 8 to 10% of like all crimes being committed against. And I believe it's due to the traumas, the generational traumas that were inflicted upon our people. See, back in the day when it was like back in the 80s and 90s, when it was just the Native brothers on the Ave drinking, this used to be their area right here alongside the roadway right here. Thought it was pretty cool that they actually got the site where they're at, you know what I mean, and built on it, so.
Well, that's a big thing, so everybody, they don't want homeless housing near them, but you got to build the homeless housing where homeless people are for them to go in.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's true. Oh, they definitely want to be still in their own communities. They're here for a reason. Yeah. Especially our Native people. This is our drop-in center. We have 25 recliners. They got showers in here. We feed them every night. This is open from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. And the nighttime team, they're on the streets finding people in the moment, whether it's cold out, whatever, hungry, pick them up and they bring them here.
The newest building, Anishinaabe 3, is for people with severe substance use, opioids and other strong addictions. Everyone that comes in, we meet them where they're at, and we have case managers on site.
When I was in active addiction out here in the streets, I'm not the same person that you're meeting here today. You would be like, that guy has severe mental health issues. And also when I see that in the street right now, I know what I'm seeing, because I was also in that very predicament. Like, your mind's so clouded and you have different thoughts going through your head that are not normal. I think it's vital to have low barrier shelters, housing, really meeting our people where they're at.
So we're at Avivo Village. It's a 100 tiny dwelling unit shelter. It's our lowest barrier. People are able to kind of come and go as they please. There's no curfew.
Why is it important to have low barrier shelters?
Yeah, it's critical because people, when they're experiencing their housing crisis, are going through other things besides just not having a house. So having too many rules or restrictions around what people can do or are able to do might prevent them from accessing shelter where there are a lot of resources.
Permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing or whatever housing of your choosing, being in here helps facilitate that process. It's harder to do that from the street, right? So because you're mobile, you're moving everywhere. Well, you have an address here. Other advocates know where to find you. Case managers know where to find you. People can look for you. People can follow up with you. So being in here gives you a great advantage. It is a low barrier. The piece that we do want to encourage you to do is that if you are using, that you use with someone else so that you're safe. So high fidelity harm reduction means that we're going to both support you in your home, give you the tools to work through those issues, and walk at the pace that you want to walk at, right? So it's not something that you're forced to do when you come here. We're going to treat you like a human being and help you. We've now housed over 200 people.
When my mom died, somehow the house got foreclosed, and then my sister, my nieces, everybody who lived there had to move. I was out on the streets in the encampments. I think about 8 years I've been outside. I just finally got up in here, which was, whew, I could get some sleep, and it wasn't cold, I had heat, had a bed and a blanket and a pillow, and then I got housing, and woohoo!
Housing was good. This place helped me get to where I'm at.
So my work is focused on ending chronic homelessness by December of 2025. So our work is informed by data pulled directly from HMIS, the Homeless Management Information System. Well, we can't solve the problem if we can't see the problem. Working with our community partners to add data directly into HMIS creates a stronger, more robust homelessness response system with the information that we need to solve the problem. We treat every person as an individual, so we are creating a cohesive, dynamic BNL or by name list and pulls information from HMIS around where they are, who they're working with, and what sort of resources would be most appropriate for them. We have seen greater outflow, the number of people each month that are exiting to a permanent housing destination. Since we started using this practice, one major milestone that we've seen is that our numbers of people experiencing chronic homelessness dipped below 300 in December of 2023 for the first time since 2017.
Where do 300 people go? The answer is 300 different places, right? In 2020, our unsheltered point in time count was 642 people. In 2023, our unsheltered point in time count was 469 people. When over that same time frame, we see cities, in many ways similar to ours, seeing 77%, even 90% increases. It's only by addressing those two forces of how many people are entering homelessness, how many people are exiting homelessness, that we can ensure we're not heading in that direction that other communities have faced. Housing first, of course, doesn't mean housing only. What it means is get people into housing as quickly as possible without prerequisites, because we know that whatever other challenges people are struggling with, they will be better able to address them in housing.
30 years ago, when I started Hennepin County, literally landlords would use the term hit and run for the social workers who would place people into housing. They got them into housing, job done. The world has changed. We found that many of the folks got into housing that end up back in homelessness. So it was no longer just about getting housing, it was about keeping housing. And that's where housing stability comes in, is ensuring that there's tenancy supports to help people through.
At Hennepin County, we're really proud of the integration between our housing stability group and our housing finance group. A couple of years ago, we created our supportive housing strategy. We'd heard from developers how hard it was for them to pull together the financing packages they needed without assurance that the service dollars would be following them. So a really brilliant part of that my human services colleagues do is they underwrite the services package while I'm underwriting the financing package.
The buckets of capital development, operations, and services, they have to work together.
When a person goes from the streets after living for years in a park or under a bridge, and then they're placed into housing, it's a whole bunch of new challenges. Retention is so important. Hennepin County is providing support, including community, so that people thrive in housing.
In 2017, we started tracking everyone experiencing chronic homelessness in our community. So more than 1,700 have moved out of homelessness into housing. And on average, each of them had been experiencing homelessness for almost 4 years when we moved them into housing. And even with this group, the success rate, the retention rate, that kind of non-recurring rate of not coming back into homelessness has held steady at around 93%. Supportive housing works and person-centered housing solutions work.
Welcome to Catholic Charities Endeavors Residence. We're a supportive housing program. This project began in 2019 when we secured funding to rehab the building. It was a nursing home and we remodeled it. We reopened in the summer of 2022. It's a unique public-private partnership with Hennepin County. We also partner with Hennepin County on this site to provide respite care, which is shelter for up to 30 people who are recovering from surgery and can't go back to a regular shelter or who were staying outside when they went in for surgery. So this allows the nurses on site to provide care and gives them a safe place to be while they recuperate. The majority of our units in this building are single room occupancy, which means that people have a bed, a dresser, a closet, and then they also have a refrigerator and a sink. Then we have shared kitchen spaces on the floor. We do have some efficiencies in the building. Those are all Section 8 units, so that is for folks who have that 30% of the income voucher, and they are all on the 6th and 5th floors of the building.
When I started doing drugs, stealing cigarettes from my daddy and marijuana and all that back when I was like 14. But the hard drugs come in, I say when I was like 18, the heroin and the cocaine.
Have you done treatment before?
This is my second time doing treatment. I did treatment in Illinois for approximately 3 months. Said with no stability when I got it. There was no support up there in the system. So it just like, Have a nice day. See you again if you come back. You know, I went to the homeless shelter, did time in the homeless shelter months. I did slept in Tent City. I did buses and trains. This went on for approximately some years. It was great help. It was a treatment program called Park Avenue. And that's what all started for me over there. You know, got me off some stuff and drugs. And I moved here ever since. This was 18 months ago. 40 years, so I was what, 15, 16, almost 40 years.
And it took housing to get you sober.
Man, it took housing to get my mind right and get off that stuff, man. First time I put that key in the door, I cried. I actually shed a tear. I said, man, this is my first apartment ever in my life. I'm 49 years old at the time I moved in, so it was real emotional for me.
This is an SRO, single room occupancy model. It's something that we need to multiply for not just getting homeless people off the streets, but also for people with low income who might be entering into homelessness. The SRO model was very popular many years ago, but it's something that we need to bring back. And here they have an old nursing home which they remodeled into SROs, and you just heard treatment with housing has the best outcomes.
We try to give them the necessary tools so that they can be successful in maintaining their current housing, because they wouldn't be able to be successful in outside housing if they don't get the necessary tools here first. We try to educate them on rental guidelines, how to manage the general upkeep of their living quarters. We try to teach them how to communicate with the utility companies so that they won't go into default and get a bad credit marking. We try to educate them in every aspect of everyday living, what they need to know.
Here we are at 925 Studios. That is 100% designated for people who are exiting homelessness. We put this in the space of is housing for people with extremely low incomes who are exiting out of homelessness, but who don't need ongoing support services or subsidies to afford the unit. It's a really important part of our continuum that allows people to flow out of the homeless shelters and into housing. We call this SRO housing because that's a general word for very affordable and independent housing, even though in these units in particular, each tenant has their own kitchenette that was built back when this project was a hotel.
I'm going home, y'all. I was in an abusive relationship and I didn't see any other way out. I felt unsafe and I felt in danger, so I left my husband. And then I came to the shelter. When I first got there, I was nervous because I didn't know what to expect, because I never lived in a shelter before ever in my life. So it was kind of scary, but at the same token, I felt safe. The shelter was a start for me, but I am so blessed to have my own place. Here we are. If it wasn't for this low income place that I'm living in, with the income that I have being disabled, I'm on Social Security disability, spinal surgeries, this low rent, and utilities and everything paid, I would still be struggling. When I moved in, the bed was here, this chair, this table, the dresser, these lamps, the microwave, the refrigerator, and the little burner. Try to make it home, just little by little. My favorite part is having my own place, my own space, my own peace of mind. Because where I was, I couldn't rest. And I wanted to live, so that's why I moved. But I chose to live. I'm just starting over, but happily.
I wasn't stable, my home wasn't stable, my mother wasn't stable. So I was pretty much in the streets and started surviving on my own by dealing drugs. I had access to narcotics. So eventually I tried it. I went from being homeless as a child because of my mother and, the lack of support, to having my own, and once I started using narcotics, I ended up homeless without nothing.
What was it like when you first walked through the door here?
It's giving me a chance to progress again, affordable. That's the key, it was affordable, so it allowed me to have my own dwelling and be in a pretty safe environment, a decent, safe environment for a reasonable amount, for my income, for what I earn. Thank you. Thank you.
This building used to be a hotel, and we actually purchased this back in 2020 during the height of the pandemic. There are also several other projects across the city. It's important to us to have that full inventory of units with shared bathrooms, units with bathrooms and kitchenettes right inside of them, and then units of every shape and size where they have case management provided on site.
I don't know, usually I have my son here, so I usually chasing him around here. To be able to provide a place for him also to feel safe and to feel like he has a place where it's designated as daddy's home now. It was absolutely huge for him too, as much as it was for me. And I've been homeless since 2017. I had a small moving company, and one morning it all changed. I lost everything, my leg, my everything, my house, and this program saved my life.
How long did it take you from meeting Pam to where you were actually living here?
It was actually almost overwhelmingly fast how quick it went from hopelessness, without a leg, no coat, to being housed. It was a matter of, I think, 3 weeks. It was almost impossible to live like that every day. It was like I didn't have any sense of dignity. Thankfully, Pam was there to assist me along the way. Having a home now, through this program, having support like Pam, I have a therapist now. Having all these resources has changed my life completely. Living off of 203 cash, 30% of that goes towards my rent, and then I have a food portion, I think around $300 in food stamps. It can be pretty tough. I'm making it happen though. I'm grateful.
If you sort of assess the overall landscape of homelessness risk in Hennepin County, I think again it points to affordable housing access. We have a shortage of 35,000 affordable housing units for our lowest income residents. Of the 100,000 folks that are at 30% or lower of area median income, more than half cannot afford their housing. They typically have less than $10,000 in annual income. So there's a clear connection between income, housing instability, and affordable housing inventory. And I think historically, we've heard from residents that their experience accessing assistance in the time of crisis has felt very fragmented, even dehumanizing. Many have described it as the social service runaround, where they're going individually to one provider or one entry point or county department, and each individual entity maybe has some limited amount of resources, but they're disjointed from others. And the burden is placed on residents to figure out where to go and when to go and what they're eligible for. So we're working on shifting that burden from residents to our system by bringing together all of our resources in a central and sort of coordinated fashion.
We're excited to be here to show you an incredible adaptive reuse. The church sold their property to a developer to create affordable housing, but the church still is existing here. They still worship here on Sunday mornings. The parishioners put the chairs out and still have their services. And the rest of the time, you can tell this is just a nice little shared community space. They already had a food shelf. They were already a place where people would come and hang out. There was a daycare here in the building. It was such a community institution. The best way to honor that was really to have the entire parcel be dedicated to affordable housing with amazing community space within it. All 41 of the units in this full project are affordable to households with incomes below 30% of the area median income. And a good number of them are also set aside for households exiting directly from homelessness.
If you didn't have affordable housing, where would you be?
I'd be probably hitting the shelter. I live on Social Security disability. Relying on the fixed income leaves me only so many options while still being able to afford food. I've always relied on public transportation. So if I go to the suburbs, it completely cuts me off from the world.
But every city and town in America seems to struggle with the NIMBYs, doesn't Hennepin County?
We do have some not in my backyard. For families that are concerned about new housing coming into their neighborhood that might house people who are exiting directly out of homelessness, there's a lot of concern and fear about the unknown, about change, about, what does that really mean to be a person who's experiencing homelessness or exiting homelessness. What we see is that when these projects are actually built and folks move in, the neighbors tend to say, well, that looks just like the rest of our neighborhood already. It looks like these individuals are people who maybe lived next door to me anyway. I just didn't know it because they weren't in a building that was meant for people experiencing homelessness. It does make the neighborhood better. It brings in more richness. Then all of a sudden we have folks attending the neighborhood meeting who are bringing in a new perspective to what the neighborhood needs.
it changes things.
Is scattered site housing. That's a model where homeless people, now formerly homeless people, are placed in housing within the community. We're visiting Melissa, who went from homelessness to homeless shelter, now to home.
My room is messy, I'm so sorry. So I was homeless for about half a year. I was out bouncing around on the street. I was in a relationship and then we broke up, so that's what really put me out in the streets. I was using when I was in the shelter here and there, but now that I'm in my own house, I feel different and I don't want to fail. So I know that in order for me not to fail, I have to change things that, my behaviors are things that would actually be the reason to fail. So I stopped that completely because I don't want to lose this. I don't want to ever go back to where I was. So I know that those are the steps I have to take in order to keep what I have. It's hard, but when you actually have your own place and you don't feel that hopelessness anymore, I don't really feel the need at all to actually use. I don't feel even like the urge to, because I have all of this and I feel like content now and happy. I'm happy, so I don't want to ruin that.
Most people want housing. I think that's like a big misconception, that people don't want housing.
Our focus as a human services department is get people into housing. That's the answer to homelessness. Criminalization, anything that makes it harder to get people into housing only sets us back.
What would you say to politicians that are pushing for a punitive response instead of investing in long-term investments?
Punishment is just not very practical and it's not economically viable.
Full stop.
It's just, it doesn't achieve the outcome. It is not less expensive. I kind of struggle with generating logic that would support that position. Criminalizing humans that have nowhere to lay their head at night is not compassionate to me. It is not logical to me. It also does not happen to make economic sense.
The public always says they don't need housing, they need treatment. But treatment plus housing is what they need.
There's millions of people who are using drugs in housing. There's millions of people who are alcoholics in housing. There's millions of people with mental health in housing right now. So those aren't reasons why people can't have the dignity and support and safety of housing.
The quality of our interventions and programs is based off of the quality of our data, based off of the quality of the questions, and the quality of relationships we have to the people who are answering those questions.
The consensus that we hear amongst our policymakers is we don't want to go backwards. We see the impact of what we have done. We see how it's changed lives. We see how it's put us on a different path.
Large cities can end chronic homelessness with a focus on data, community investment, and focusing on incremental gains over a period of time. It is possible to work with a very large community or a small community.
One of the things that we find ourselves reiterating again and again and again, for good reason, as we brief policymakers, as we make the case in public hearings, is people that we engage with experiencing homelessness want housing. Our experience is people can be housed, and our experience is that people can be successful in housing.
I'm blown away. We just spent a week here in Hennepin County. We learned and saw firsthand how a community-wide system can reduce homelessness here in America. Nothing is perfect, but they are actually moving forward and literally reducing homelessness while other communities are just seeing homelessness grow. Eviction prevention, affordable housing, shelters, outreach, permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, SROs, and getting people who can transition out of permanent supportive housing back into society. We've seen it all this week. It all needs to work together. Coordination is the biggest part. We need to leverage politicians and the nonprofits in our community to work together. Wherever you live, you need to speak up because you've seen it can be done, but we need to reduce homelessness in every community. That's where your voice matters. If you do not want to see homeless encampments, Hennepin County validates the only permanent solution to reducing homelessness is solving homelessness.